All right, MA Marignon, turn 65. Forget exactly what's happening this turn. We've caused a bit of a diplomatic incident in this game, but let's go through the messages. We'll talk about it after the jump. We finished research in alteration level 9. This is very nice. Our first 9, a bit on the slow side. As is my way, I like to split my research just about everywhere. I think we've even split it a bit into blood this game. And if we haven't yet, we will. And then evocation 8 is next for Pillar of Fire. We are, speaking of blood, searching for blood sites. Hey, we find a damned merchant. Not quite the site. We're looking for those discount sites, but more blood slaves is nice. For our ambition, that is, not so much for our people. We Twiceborn, one of our more useful Lamia queens that we brought in. Ugh, dire portent, that's not good. So it looks like man has cast something. We'll have to take a look. The global slots are pretty close to full and might already be full. So global might have been eliminated by this. And that could be our global, because our cast is not incredibly strong. We bring in a couple summons that we're going to need for some of our armies. We're shifting around our Horror Harmonica Golem, a little more site searching, remote site searching for blood, which doesn't work out. We bring a crap ton of gold in with 80 fire gems. A lot of this gold we're going to invest in forts, most likely, although one of the big diplomatic shifts is Ariu has canceled non-aggression pacts with everyone, so that includes us, and we will not quite have enough time to finish our new fort constructions before the non-aggression pact expires. So we were planning on doing a bunch of fortifying because we're sitting in between 2 elves, and I'm expecting to get raided a lot, but it might happen a little bit before we're quite ready. So we probably will still gamble on some fort constructions and just defend them because, Ariu's not going to be able to hit us everywhere at once. So there's no point in, delaying our fort construction just because we might get raided. Otherwise, like shifting some mages around, doing a little bit of reanimation because we may need some underwater siege strength for Yis, for the elves that we've been talking about. Looks like we catch a magic phase battle between Ulm and Phlegra. So I'm guessing that this is a golem? No, right, the birds. Yeah, Ulm seems to like these birds. I don't know, I'm not sold. Although, if I recall, I think it worked out last time. So yeah, so they sniped the commander, right? Armies of Phlegra are routed, but I think the birds are going to rout. No, the bird commander holds out. Wow. So, skin of the teeth, but that does work, but I don't know. 10 air gems, it's rough. Of course, I do use this spell a decent amount, but then I just tend to cast it in my own provinces, so I don't even get a province out of the deal, but I do at least get to keep the birds, so that's something. Then we have some regular site searching, which mostly doesn't work out for us, but we do find an enchanted pyre, which is really nice. We're very interested in fire gems. And then we had an assassin in place and figured, sure, let's go for it. There is definitely some dangerous stuff in this stack that he would have no chance of assassinating, but we got one of the easier mages, and so I think this will probably work out for us. Blindness is definitely not going to matter for the Vinemen, because I think I don't know how they see, but it's not with eyes. So yeah, that assassination works out for us, and we find a lightless lantern, which is very nice. We'll probably send this assassin back to a lab and drop that off. And then there's a bunch of battles, mostly not involving us, but some involving us. Ooh, okay, this is a hint in terms of what man cast. So it looks like Vengeful Waters, I think. So yeah, we'll look at that last. Well, that'll be the last battle we look at. This is Ariu raiding Agartha, so probably pretty standard elf kit. We can probably expect a good amount of this in our future, so no fire resistance on these guys yet, although he's not raiding Marignon just yet, and he's just up against 1 province defense, so he's going to have no problem with that. So yeah, I expect those elven raiders will be given something to deal with fire resistance, and then we bump with the lone bird, right? This is the other problem with that spell. So we also have birds in addition to a few other things, so I think we're going to be able to see that bird off, and that must have been Phlegra's throne fortification. So Ulm was trying to lock that down diplomatically. Honestly, kind of a waste of time, I think, because I think I would have just right? So I'm not going to let some birds just keep my army off. But sometimes, if maybe I didn't want another war, it can matter, right? If you just have your flag sitting on a province, sometimes that is enough to see people off. But in this case, it would not have been, and was not, because we were already moving in that direction. And then we have a Bakemono raiding group, probably, also one province defense. Agartha is deep in like anti-elf raiding mode, so probably not going to be seeing a lot of province defense out of them, because it's just not that useful, right, against elven raiders. But their forts are in good shape, so I'd say overall they're doing pretty well. This is Asphodel retreating. It looks like this is one of Man's armies that is advancing. And that's, I guess I can spoil the other bit of diplomatic news. So Asphodel did not appreciate being dogpiled. They were perfectly polite and reasonable about it. But basically they're like, well, we're going to have to fight a 4v1. Then, they're just going to tap out right now and go AI, which and I don't think there was any, sometimes I think, people threaten AI or just set themselves to be AI, kind of as a spiteful move. That's not really the sense I got here. I think, they just looked at the situation and was like, I can't win this. I have limited time in my life. This just isn't worth it. So we'll see. I don't think they've set themselves to AI just yet. And I believe that discussion is what triggered Ariu to just be like, you know what? No more non-aggression pacts for anyone. It's the end game. Let's rock and roll, which I do appreciate. Overall, I agree with. But basically all this to say that, Asphodel doesn't really think highly of their chances. I also suggested that we could pause potentially to look for a sub, since it was my ending of the non-aggression pact that triggered them to decide that this game isn't worth it anymore. I would be willing to look for that sub. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge to find a sub for that. Like, hey, you're in a 4v1. Like, ooh, that's rough. Also, you're Asphodel. Wait, no, come back. It's not as bad as it sounds. But it's pretty bad, definitely. But Asphodel is doing some solid raiding. Ulm is still investing in province defense. And in fairness, Centaur are less dangerous than Elven Thugs and more likely to stop province defense. But, they're still Centaurs, and that is still Deer Tribe, so it doesn't work out for them. So let's see. Yeah, so they at least, caused 2 casualties, but I'm not really sure that's worth the gold effort. But, you got to try things, definitely. And, again, since they're part of a 4v1, they can kind of afford, to not waste resources, but, take unfavorable exchanges, basically. And then Asphodel, they're not going to have the resources to fight against 4 people. Which is, by design. So this is looking like, I'm not sure. I don't think we've seen this Ulmish force, kind of in between an army and like a raiding force. Although they run into a thug group here, really just a thug and friends who have, buffed this fellow up, provided a bug screen, and now he's going in. And I'm not sure if there's going to be enough anti-super combatant stuff here. There is a Black Lord Thug, and I do think this is a more reasonable level of kit investment, but I'm not sure a Sword of Sharpness is going to be enough damage. It is at least armor piercing, so that's definitely going to matter. Yeah, and actually the protection on this guy is not that high, although he does have awe, I think because he's either killed someone that was in the arena, or I think he was an arena champion. He's also got, extraordinary agility, so increased attack and defense skills. So even aside from the protection, his attack is really high, his defense is really high. This is a long weapon, so repels are absolutely on the table. He also has fear, regeneration. This is a really scary dude. He's got moss body, luck. How does he have luck? That's interesting, because he is undead, and normally the undead can't have luck, but this guy has it. He must just have it because the item gives it to him, but I think it just does nothing. Anyway, he doesn't need the luck. I think he's going to be just fine, because I think there's just the one Black Lord Thug. And these guys were focused on, buffing the army, and I think they're probably Earth casters. Yeah, Earth 4, not the best, evocation path, so I think Ulm is screwed here. We'll go ahead and speed this up. He's not super killy. Ooh, 41. That must be the Black Lord. Maybe I spoke too soon, but, yeah. Still, they are hammering this guy pretty hard. He's, down maybe to roughly half health, although I think that Black Lord Thug is now dead, and so, man, wow, they got him. So I'm still looking for the evidence, but I'm pretty sure it was the casters. There's actually a death caster that I missed here that was casting Dust to Dust. That definitely does a good amount of damage. However, these Earth guys, which I had written off, were casting Shatter, because I guess that guy does count as inanimate. So I'm still looking for evidence of a lot of damage from those, but we can see like the behemoth periodically doing chip damage. So yeah, I mean, this is what killed him down here, 44 points of damage. Doesn't actually really specify like what it is. It's got to be one of those spells. So let's take a look at the mages. Yeah, so it looks like Dust to Dust was actually not too much of a factor. I don't really see any damage rolls here. Yeah, it does look like it was the Shatters that did the trick here. So some advance and cast spells on, Earth mages, like against inanimates, makes a big difference. And, Dominions is a complicated game. So that's a rough loss for Asphodel. I really did think that was going to work out for them. But nicely done by Ulm. And they lose a little bit, but Ulm can absolutely accept losses like this. Whereas like Asphodel probably doesn't have too many thugs of that caliber. And then Ulm has another attack against Phlegrin territory. Right, this is the fort they've been sitting on top of for a little while. And this is another relatively mundane force. Also has a Black Lord thug. No, excuse me. This is a hero, so he has a little bit of extra kit, it looks like. But yeah, this is more or less the same kind of stuff we've been seeing. And Phlegra just kind of has a grab bag of stuff in here, including some Gigante warriors. No commanders really, though, so they're just going to rush out, and I'm pretty sure they're just going to get absolutely annihilated. So yeah, Ulm definitely will take a few losses. But it does actually take them a second to build up these troops because they have very high resource costs. So, depending on how set they are in terms of their forts and the placement of those forts, if they lose a bunch of infantry, even though gold-wise it's relatively cheap to replace, it can sometimes take them a second to replace those losses. But I don't think they lost too much. Yeah, just 14 infantry. Oh man, they do manage to lose the hero. That's rough. And it's probably just the hurlers. These guys are really dangerous, like on the walls, sending these guys in. Like, yeah, you get some really nice armor, but you get smacked by a couple rocks, and that's all she wrote. Yet another example of why, human HP thugs, really hard to pull off. You really kind of just have to go wide with them and accept that there's going to be a lot of casualties. So Man is pinging one of Asphodel's forts. Speaking of thugs and how they don't have more, here's another one of Asphodel's thugs, although it does look like they're getting down to it a bit because here's an astral booster that's, subbing in as a helmet because this guy does not have any astral paths. So yeah, their situation is perhaps a bit more dire than I thought. I mean, we did see them repulse one of Man's attacks, so, I was a little concerned that this war might flip, but, perhaps things are not, clearly things are not going as well as I thought, since, their reaction to me coming in was, okay, I've had enough of this game, so fair enough. And then here we are storming Nazca. This is going to be a bit of a rough storm for us, because we're just sending in our army, like nothing special. It should win. But hey, here's those hurlers, right? It's going to be painful for us too, getting slapped by those rocks. Also, the Communion is in better shape than I hoped, and they blasted out a bunch of fire elementals. Luckily, we do have a good amount of fire resistance on the Bless, the Marignon, and we have to worry about our own fire stuff. It works out for us, but it's not without loss. I say it works out for us, or one of these guys, we're up against some thugs. We definitely can struggle with that, so it's okay. This guy's not no, excuse me. I think this guy was a thug who we enslaved Mind on, so he used to be a commander. Also, he's twice born, so I have no idea how that works now that he's on our side. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get another thug here. Yeah, we managed to capture the other guy as well. So that's actually a really nice result for us. Let's see. We do lose 15, half of our Knights of the Chalice. We can replace them relatively quickly, especially since now we're, using our fire gems for a lot of gold. But, still, this is a really expensive loss, losing, half of our knights. And we, in a similar way, we might not be able to replace these losses in this location as easily. We might actually have to, gateway some units out. And we more or less lose the rest of our front line. So yeah, this army needs to be resupplied with units. But like I said, we do manage to grab 2 tyrants, and these guys might actually be worth casting Gift of Reason, or I think Divine Name. There's a couple ways to turn units into commanders. And it's pretty pricey, but these guys, we don't really have super combatants of their tier. and they also have some paths that, they have decent death paths. They also have the air death cross sometimes. I don't know if these particular guys did. But anyway, these are, possibly worth Gift of Reasoning. So we'll probably do that and have some thugs. Looks like we do have a few retreats as well, probably the remainder of our infantry. So that's not too relevant. And then let's see, we catch some more battles. So this war between Asphodel and Man and Ulm is, ongoing. And it's definitely raging. So this is a storm attempt by a couple of mages. They look unkitted, and those centaur archers are going to be real dangerous. This fort is basically empty though, so I guess that's why they felt like, sure, we can just send some mages in. I don't know though. They are going to have pretty high protection now. It looks like the archers are berserkers, so that's not ideal. But they are just, I guess, I don't know. Do they have robes? They're probably just dudes in robes. I don't know. It's Ulm, so they probably have leather armor or something. What do you wear? Of course, ringmail. But even still, no helmet, if a bunch of centaurs run up, that's going to be a problem for them. So that's a little bit painful, but, master smiths are recruit anywhere, so I'm sure Ulm has plenty of them, and that's, not the end of the world for them, and I do appreciate, right, trying to do things on the cheap. And then, this is not on the cheap. So this is Asphodel assaulting, one of Man's forts, and it's more or less empty. So, Asphodel did lose one of their armies, more or less, repulsing, Man's attack, where Man also lost a lot of stuff. But I did see that, one of Man's forts had been cracked. This is just to the north of where that battle was last turn. And so Asphodel is not out of it. They're still taking infrastructure, which is a pretty big deal. But 4v1. That's why we're entering right now. That's the intent, to be cutthroat and make sure that we don't have to fight this on our own, and we can pick up a bunch of easy gains. So I'm sure that worked out for Asphodel, probably without too much loss. Ouch, they do manage to lose one of their cap-onlys, though maybe it was twice-born, so possibly that was part of the plan. Otherwise, almost no losses. Not that Man had too much in that fortification. And then, so Vengeful Waters. Man has this up. We're definitely going to have to make sure that we keep Man's dominion out of our lands. And if we ever attack into Man's territory, we're going to have to, we're going to get assassination attempts by water elementals. And also this is our scout. So any of our scouts that are in Man's territory are going to be at risk from water elemental assassinations. So scouting Man's territory is going to be a lot more difficult as well. And then we have some unexpected events. Barbarian horde attacked. Worse, we lose 1,000 population. That's kind of rough. Let's see. Right, fertility cult. So that's the reason that we, as I suspected, keep getting attacked by monster boars and dryads. So we do have some units in here patrolling, but I guess, they haven't found them yet. So fingers crossed that we get rid of that fertility cult. I have kind of wondered in the past where it's how bad can a fertility cult be? Well, if you don't want constant attacks by the forces of nature, you got to get rid of it. We have some bad omens. That's okay. Some people starting to worship a false pretender, but we dealt with it. And our province defense repulsed the barbarian attack. That is nice. We are starting to invest more heavily in places because, we're kind of preparing somewhat for a bunch of elves. I've talked about how province defense is not great at beating elven raiders, but having all this chaff does provide mages that are going to be in these provinces time to do whatever it is that they need to do. I think we're also planning on starting a fort construction here. We may have already started it, which is also probably why we've invested more heavily in province defense there. And then we catch quite a few units. So let's see, we find one of Phlegra's scouts somewhere. That's less relevant. We get discovered in Uruk. This is in Marignon's land. Luckily, it's just a scout, not one of our troubadours. So that's nice. And this is mostly just a garbage patrol, which I do appreciate. So it doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Other than there are a lot of crossbowmen, but we already knew that. And then we patrol out 2 Ysian scouts. Is this in the same place? No, one of them's on top of Miklin. And this is nice because, again, right now we're not showing anything. And same thing here. So, quite a few Ysian scouts have been popping up recently. And it wouldn't surprise me if Ariu got in touch with Yis, or maybe will get in touch with Yis and might try to do, some elven coordination. On the other hand, it's probably also just kind of a good time, right, to attack me because I'm busy with Phlegra. Now everybody knows that, my non-aggression pact with Asphodel has finished, right? So definitely going to be involved in 2 wars. So if both of the elves attack me right now, like that could work out for them pretty well. So we're definitely going to have our work cut out for us, no matter what happens with Asphodel. And I suspect that there's going to be a lot of elves in our future. This is the throne fortification that we're upgrading. So we'll probably start a citadel here this turn. Again, trying to fortify for the elves. And then we breach. This is the throne fortification that Phlegra has that, we're discussing with Ulm, who should get that. Discussing via birds and armies, that is. And then we have some patrolling, and I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Probably most important is diplomatic news that we can't see on the map. So Asphodel has chosen to continue playing, so we don't have to worry about them going AI, at least not yet. We do not have to find a sub, which is good because I'm pretty busy right now. And they said, they decided to keep playing since ARU was going to balance things, in their words, roughly. So we have not talked with ARU, and obviously they canceled their non-aggression pacts with everyone. But considering that it happened right as we canceled our non-aggression pact to attack Asphodel, I think we can expect some elves in our future. Also, we're not going to talk with Yis. It is what it is. So whenever Yis attacks, they attack. We're going to try to get some more scouts in the water and try to detect when they're coming. Of course, they'll be able to cloud trapeze. So probably once our non-aggression pact with ARU ticks down, which actually I need to double check on, I think it's going to be the same turn that our non-aggression pact finishes with Asphodel. But yeah, I realized just now that I'm not 100% sure that's true. But regardless, we will need to move counter raiders out once our war with Asphodel starts. Basically, we have at least 3. I guess Man also has some stealthy forces, although we don't have to worry about them currently. But anyway, we have 3 neighbors that have stealthy raiders. I guess Yis actually doesn't have that many stealthy raiders, but they can deep raid. Anyway, all this to say that I'm expecting a lot of raiding in our future. So yeah, we'll have to figure something out for that. It's probably just going to be fire elementals from witch hunters, but we might also try like various night groups and flagellants and whatever we can throw together. We will probably also have to fight Xibalba sooner rather than later. I imagine if we get attacked by a bunch of people, Xibalba doesn't really have a lot of options right now. I'm not sure how invested they are, but they are building up. I think these are their sacreds. So yeah, they're building up forces. Like I expect them to fight well. They certainly fought well against Phlegra, so I would not count them out at all. It is possible that Yis jumps in and tries to eat them, but at the same time, I think there's a good chance that if we get heavily engaged by ARU and Asphodel, Yis will take that moment to attack, at which point it probably would be wise for Xibalba to attack. So possibly we should preempt this, but we do have other things that we need to do, right? So Phlegra we need to finish off, and then this will probably just become another front against Asphodel. The throne here, unfortunately, is in their cap circle, which is something I think I missed before. So this could be somewhat difficult to wrest from them. We might have to basically completely eliminate Asphodel in order to grab this throne. And of course, we'll probably have to fight Ulm for it. We'll see. In the meantime, Phlegra is not done, and they moved their massive force into their capital. It's looking like they're just aiming at a last stand. I'm not really sure because they had the opportunity to attack out, but yeah, it looks like they're just going defensive. Also of note, I'm pretty sure that these used to be Phlegran territory. Yeah, it must have been because this is in their cap circle, right? So Asphodel has just chosen to move in. They are fairly cutthroat. Not that this is standard Vulture stuff, right? Phlegra's on their way out. Who knows? Phlegra may have even attacked them. We have some scouts in the area, but certainly not full scout coverage. Regardless, we are going to use our Horror Harmonica Golem, where he's right here. So he's going to teleport on top of this. Like, will he be? I think he'll probably be able to take out the province defense, assuming that there's no patrollers. And as long as, like, none of the super combatants are patrolling, he actually has a decent chance of, well, he'll definitely survive. But, of course, when he takes a hit with the ringer returning, he just goes home. But if there aren't too many patrollers, he has a good chance of locking the fort down and holding this army in here, which would be really nice. Because in the meantime, our main army, not our only army, we still have this army in Nazca, which is just going to hang out. It kind of needs to be replenished. It's a little low on troops. We have basically no front line anymore. We're pretty low on knights as well. So, like, the Mage Corps is fine, but it needs to have more stuff added to it. It'll probably move over to Old Man Mountains here in a few turns, and will eventually, probably help in an assault on the last Phlegron holdings and or, fight against Asphodel if Asphodel comes in a strong way. In the meantime, our other army that, still has more troops in it is going to be storming this fort. I think this is empty, so we should be fine, or at least relatively empty. And this army may hang out here a turn or two as well to kind of replenish, and we'll have to see. We'll also have to see like what Ulm does. We have no non-aggression pact with Ulm, and we know that they're interested, in this throne province. They had locked it down with those birds, and they do have a substantial force right here that just took this fort. So, this is going to be an interesting area that has, a lot of different people. There's also a question of, like, what Shiniyama is up to. They have a pretty massive force here. So I don't know if this is planning on the throne or thinking about Ariu or maybe interested in, trying to grab what remains of Phlegra's territory. But yeah, we'll hopefully keep eyes on that. But there's definitely a number of places that it could go. The Ariu-Agartha war, continues. A lot of raiding and counter-raiding back and forth. But as far as I can tell, we're going to move back over here and see if this Agarthan fort is still unlocked. But it looks like the majority of Agarthan's forts, of which there aren't a ton, but still, the recruitment centers are unlocked, so like this war is still ongoing, and will hopefully keep Ariu somewhat busy. So that covers our current war and kind of the north. In the south, one of our armies coming from the capital is moving out. We're bringing up various items and gems with one of our gem carriers. And so, yeah, that army will probably actually just hang out in these caverns, at least for the first turn of the war. We do see, like, a substantial force. It's, we don't know how many centaur are here since they're stealthy. The Ko-Oni are dangerous. The Carrion are less dangerous, especially for us, because we have some useful spells, some useful anti-undead spells that are specific to Marignon. But we'll hopefully be able to get raiders in position to kind of lead the attacks and then move our armies in afterwards. Speaking of our raiders, we've got one werewolf that is headed to this fort and another werewolf that is headed to Arcocephaly, and we'll hopefully gear out both of them next turn. I think we launch attacks on the turn 67, and then they'll land turn 68. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, hopefully the werewolves will be leading some of those attacks. We've got another werewolf here on his way over, and then we have this werewolf here that's still just hanging out, I think, because yeah, we have a couple turns. Yeah, here he is summoning some allies. So he'll probably, hit this province and sneak through here. As long as Pelagia still, they have this fort unlocked, right? So as long as they still have some of this territory, I'm going to let them hold on to this. We don't really need it to move through the area, right? So our other main army is moving out from Bandar Log. So this is what we're looking at. A variety of stuff. We've got some trolls, crossbowmen out front, more or less as chaff. And in this one, other than the trolls, we're pretty much, totally focused on the flagellants, and we should be picking up quite a few more flagellants, to help make up our front line, and we're going to continue to recruit them there. Also have a good number of knights here. Where are they? Somewhere down here. Yeah, and some more flagellants. So anyway, that's roughly what this army has. We'll talk more about the details once it actually goes into action. But this is probably the army that will go for Nabha, right? So it'll take this fort here and possibly fight any kind of reinforcements coming from Asphodel, their capital that is. And if there aren't reinforcements coming quickly enough, then it'll hop on top of Nabha. We are trying to move as many scouts into position kind of in the surrounding lands. Again, Asphodel does have a lot of stealthy units, but their main armies will be filled with Carrion, which are not stealthy. So we'll hopefully be able to get some advanced warning of that. And then our forces in Arcocephaly, we probably won't form up into another army, at least not at first, and kind of use those as more raiding groups. I am trying to be a little more conservative in terms of the mage usage for these armies. You can see like a lot of these guys are going to hang out. A lot of them are moving, but a lot of them are going to stay here, research. Obviously, we are still worried about Yis, so we don't want to depopulate this completely. Also of note, I think Asphodel, right, it's the middle of, or late summer right now, but Asphodel's core territory here all has like snow on the ground, right, cold too. So I think Asphodel went full cold, and we can definitely expect some murdering winters to hit our armies as they move into Asphodel's territory. So, these really large forces are going to be extremely susceptible to that, and will probably be okay in places that we've gotten our dominion into. And, once the war actually starts, we'll probably start to do some stealthy preaching, which we are not doing. This is just natural, push. We do have the throne of bureaucracy here, and we have significantly more temples along the border. So we're not actually actively pushing our dominion yet with our stealthy preachers, but we probably will start doing that, once the war starts, though we don't have that many friars over here. So we are building more friars, but yeah, I probably haven't built enough unforted temples. I don't know. We'll see. I might be regretting the unforted temples that we have, once all the elves attack. But anyway, we need to be extremely careful moving, large stacks of squishy human mages into areas that are cold. And of course, since it's late summer, we're going to be launching our attack, pretty much at the onset of winter. So, you can tell there was absolutely no planning when it comes to the seasons in terms of launching this attack. But we probably will just break up a lot of these armies and, use them as raiding forces. Basically just, we'll have forces that are strong enough to defeat province defense and maybe, light counter raiders, but aren't really worth spending all the gems on a murdering winter for. Now that said, Naban, right, does have Asphodel's Dominion in it, so it will probably, it's full heat right now, but I expect once it heads towards winter, it'll probably be cold, and we are going to need some siege strength to crack it. So we might bring some more eagles in. I think we are bringing at least a few eagles down, but we are going to leave behind the majority of our eagles. Yeah, we're just bringing a few down. So we're going to leave the majority of our eagles here, really to just provide some extra siege strength to this army. Yeah, because this army only has 5 great eagles, so could definitely use some more siege strength. But we are starting to build up some air gems, so we might do 1 or 2 more summonings of eagles to provide for some siege strength, because the eagles have enough hit points that they should be able to shrug off murdering winter without too much difficulty. So that covers the majority of our preparations down on our southern front for the war with Asphodel. We are assuming that Ariu is going to be attacking, like I said, so we're doing, quite a bit of troop recruitment, kind of all over the place. You can see that, we started with a lot of gold, right? Because, how much gold did we get this turn? Right, we had an additional 5,600 gold. We spent all of it. So, we are building a ton more troops. You can see that our our upkeep to income ratio is, starting to get a little concerning, roughly 50%, which is not great. So we do need to be careful that, we don't get too heavy in terms of our upkeep, but we are expecting relatively heavy losses fairly soon. So it's okay if we balloon up for a little while, because that will get knocked down. Yeah, we're going to need kind of forces all over the place, because like I said, I am expecting Ariu to raid us pretty hard, so we're going to have to spread counter raiders out all over the place. We'll probably just play defense against Ariu at first, but also somewhat depending on what Yis does. There are some thrones, like this throne has not been fortified yet, so there are definitely places, also like this is a capital that's not too far from us, so there is the possibility for a counterattack. Don't know exactly what we would be doing that with yet, but like I said, we are recruiting troops, kind of all over the place. We are also starting some fortifications, so we're building a palisade here in this province, primarily because we get a lot of gem income from this place. It will not be finished by the time the non-aggression pact finishes, so we are moving some mages there. We'll probably move this stack of troops here. We're really hoping to patrol out. There's that fertility cult here. So yeah, we're patrolling, but we'll probably head out relatively soon to cover that fort construction. I think we are also, starting a fortification here. Of note, I don't think I said anything, but yeah, you don't get anything from the ruined halls of the Mountain King. It just adds a site to remind you that you're a terrible person and that you looted this location. But yeah, this location, not as useful in terms of gems. We do get a blood slave and a nature gem, but it does provide, a lot of income. It also has the advantage that there's already a lab here. So, anywhere that there's already a lab, that is a more attractive place for a fort. And, we might try to start just fortifying, like putting forts basically everywhere along our border with Yis, like especially along the coast. This is definitely a hostile move, but I mean, yeah, I think, Yis is probably going to attack us anyway. So what? And then artifact-wise, we are forging, let's see, the Tome of the Lower Plains. To a certain extent, because it's cheap, it also provides blood magic +1, which we probably will need. We'll need some blood boosters, absolutely, right? This is our person who could theoretically summon vampires in the future, which we do have research set up for. So vampires require blood 3, so we'll need at least 2 blood boosters. Now, there are cheaper and other blood boosters, so we don't strictly need the artifact. But in my experience, it's rare that you're like, oh, yeah, I don't need this booster. I can't find any use for it. Like, boosters are pretty much always useful. So our pretender kind of had a free turn this turn because I didn't want to summon a Lamia Queen. We don't really have the nature gems for it since we have a couple armies in motion that are going to be chewing up a lot of nature gems. And I don't want to let our fire gem stocks get too low. So yeah, you didn't really have anything else pressing to do, so sure, why not forge, an artifact booster? We probably will eventually move him up to the steel ovens here, but this is very heavily enemy dominion currently, which will make his hit points extremely low, and then it's also on the border with one of our enemies and not too far from a future enemy, and yeah, we don't control this area super effectively just yet, so I'm a little bit concerned, moving our squishy pretender into that location. And then research-wise, let's see, yeah, we hit Alteration 9, so we got our first 9. That is nice. Moving on to Evocation 8, we've talked about that. Enchantment 8 is going to provide all the battlefield-wide elemental resistance buffs, which will be important against Asphodel. Since they have been using like Grip of Winter, the fatigue plays for cold, and unfortunately we don't really have a lot of water mages, so it's going to be somewhat difficult for us to cast that. And in some ways we're actually already set because I believe Alteration also provides, it provides an army-wide protection against cold. For Alteration, it's the opposite paths that provide you, the protection, whereas for enchantment it's the same path that provides you with protection. So in our case, this is actually more useful since we have plenty of fire mages, so maybe shouldn't be researching enchantment 8. Then again, like Liches, Mass Regeneration, both really useful spells in the late game here, so yeah, we'll think on that a little bit. We will spill over a little bit. We're going to finish Evocation 8 this turn. And then after that, blood magic for the vampires, we don't really actually have a ton of pressing research needs right now, I feel. So I'm going to leave it. Well, this turn is already rolled, so can't change it anyway. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 65.